Hello and welcome to the award-winning DOOH ads you have to see. Now obviously DOOH stands for Digital Out of Home, and this is a presentation I've just given at the Somo Borac conference over in Zagreb. Thank you to Goto Digital for making that happen. More of them soon. Who am I, first of all? Why are you listening to me right now? Well, first of all, my name is Dino. Hello, and nice to meet you. I am a creative. I am a techie. I have worked in advertising in various roles for 30 years. I also do quite a lot of innovation within the out-of-home industry as well, and help clients solve lots of other innovation problems as well. But I've also done quite a lot within the judging and the awards of out-of-homes as well. So for instance, I help the World Out-of-Home Organization with their awards every year, and I've sat on many panels and I've seen a lot of award entries, shall we say, and judged them as well. Just to give you a bit of background to where I'm coming from, I started out way back in the day, so in the 90s, early 90s, in museums, exhibits, electronics, that sort of thing. Then went on to CD-ROMs, designing and creating those and programming them as well. Then worked for Disney for about 7 years, dealing with lots of sort of franchise websites, launching movies and lots of games as well. Then I went to a place called Digital Outlook, where we actually dealt with movie studios, did a lot of the promotions you've probably seen, Pixar, that sort of thing. Went into the music industry for a short while and out of it quite quickly as well. Went into virtual worlds for children. Then there was a company which was pretty much just an advertising agency, so a proper above the line TV, print, digital out of home. And the last maybe 5 years I've been over at Sky helping set up their digital innovation labs. So how do you innovate at scale for 30,000 people? So always creative, always technical, lots of management going on in there as well, but always curious, should we say, bit of mischief going on. I have to stop at this point and just say a big shout out to Goto Digital. I'm not being paid to say this, by the way. I'm doing this all just because really impressed by Goto Digital. Probably the UK is one of the leading innovation markets for digital out of home. Maybe Australia, maybe the US, maybe also have a claim to that as well. However, Croatia, you've got all the toys that we've got. You've got facial recognition. This is with Goto Digital. You've got screens that have got touch screens on them. You've got cameras. You've got all sorts of stuff. So the things that a lot of other countries are trying to strive for, you already got. So if you want to step straight into innovation, you've got a great basis there. So you might not quite realize how lucky you are, but there you go. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm just really impressed by just how ahead of the game you guys are. So without going on any further, let's actually see the ads. That's why you're here, right? So first one I have to mention is BA Lookup. Now, obviously, it almost does what it says on the tin, so to speak. There is a child in the advert that is looking up at an aeroplane going to Barcelona or coming from Barcelona. And it's all about the marvel of flying. Now, it's the first time the industry really paid attention to data with creativity, with theatre as well. This is all about the video that you're watching now is only really possible from one person's perspective watching this video. So if you were slightly to the right, you wouldn't have seen this aeroplane and it wouldn't have worked, but it was about the video that came out afterwards. So they're looking at the aeroplane, they're looking at the data of the aeroplane, the API, they're using that geolocated into London. They know when the aeroplane is going over, is in view, and they're triggering this advert. So won multiple awards and is always referenced as one of the most innovative ads. And it certainly started a lot of this data and creativity thing. Bonds Boys, this doesn't get a huge amount of airtime, but is equally brilliant. So this is using data, but making data fun and interesting. Now, Bonds make underpants for men, and these two characters, which they use in their advertising, are the boys. They are, let's face it, they're testicles, okay? So when it's sunny, they're nice and relaxed at the bottom. When it's windy, they're swinging about. And when it's cold, they're all tight at the top. So yes, you can use data, but it's how you use it that's really important. So this was just a brilliant example of using data and using it with a little bit of fun, basically. This is about how do you actually get, I guess, people to move, to make a difference in the world. So this is Women's Aid, one of the first big sort of innovation projects I worked on. So this is for Women's Aid, and it's about domestic violence. And the whole point about domestic violence is if you just walk past it, if you ignore it, if you don't want to take any sort of part in it, nothing will change. If you actually just looked at it, engaged in it, and spent some time with it, then things will happen, things will move. So that's exactly what this is about. There's a camera on the billboard. If you look at the billboard, then the bruises of the woman disappear. and it takes multiple people to remove all of the bruises. So you really need an entire city to engage with it to make any change whatsoever. So as you can see on the screen right now, it made a huge impact, traveled the world, and it was all really about not only the great creative as well. So this was by WCRS, some great creative thinkers there, but also it was about the when it was launched. It was launched on International Women's Day. The press were invited. So it's about how you put the campaign together to how much it can travel on past the billboard. This is a really good example of using something like a QR code. Now this is from Japan, this is McDonald's. And what happened, we just had lockdown, people were a bit sort of bored with their eating preferences, shall we say. So McDonald's seized on this by putting QR codes on billboards. And on the billboard it said, scan this QR code and you could unlock, you might be able to win a free meal, a free extra. So people of course did. And obviously on your phone, it would then say you've won some fries or a Big Mac or something like that. But they were also promoting their new menu, which they wanted people to actually, you know, be aware of. So the brilliant thing about this one is not only did people actually engage with the billboard ads, you were giving something for free, which is always a good thing to do. But the brilliance of this was it was using some sort of attribution. So as the person was scanning the QR code, it was going onto their phone was then accessing a URL, and that phone was then going into a store and buying some or redeeming this voucher against some food. So they knew that the billboard had gone to somebody's phone and then that was actually being redeemed. So they had a data trail from the billboard to the purchase. So that sort of thing, that sort of attribution is very rare, but if done well, this is a really good example of it. Now this is actually from Croatia. This is a real live advert, but it's actually for an insurance company. And obviously what they want to do is they want to sort of relieve you of all the burdens. And therefore, if you're anxious, they want to know about that and they want to help as well. So this used AI, uses cameras to then detect when the face might be displaying the very subtle signs of anxiety. If you're sort of a little bit worried about something, then what it does is it doesn't try and diagnose you or anything like that. It just gives you some very simple tips you can take away on your phone. So a very simple thing. You always have to be careful that you're not trying to diagnose something that is actually quite dangerous. This just does it beautifully and very simply as well. So very on brand for the insurance company, and also using the technology to do that as well. This used the same sort of thing, but this is actually again for a charity. This is a knife crime charity in the UK. Now, you can't really just easily tackle knife crime. It's a very complicated thing. And the people involved in it, the people, the victims, the culture, the gangs, they don't really listen to anybody. You can't just do an advert and say, please stop. The only people they would really listen to were really their mothers. And that's basically the insight behind his campaign. But then they put some technology behind that to make sure it's relevant as well. So that's what I love about this one. So what happens here is they've trained the billboards itself. They've got microphones on them. They train the billboards to actually listen for ambulances. Not police cars, not fire engines, ambulances. So there's an AI that actually was trained to do that. And this all sounds like it's all made up. It's absolutely true. They trained it to listen to ambulances. When the ambulances were heard in the location, that's when these billboards would then trigger with a very emotional conversation between somebody and their son or their daughter, just to sort of start the behavioral cycles going in their brain. So it was a really, really nice campaign that used technology, but at the underneath, it's emotional and it's behavioral as well. So really like that one. Now that was very local. It was all about what's going on in the location. This is global. So this is actually a competition winner from the Ocean Outdoor competition in the UK. As you can see, some logos going by, and it was all about, this is Space for Giants. It's about obviously our dwindling elephants and trying to support them. What you would do is you go to the website, you would sponsor an elephant and you would put your name on an elephant, and then it would then show a herd of elephants going by. Now these are real-time generated elephants using WebGL, which is a very sort of new technology at the time. If you're a company, you can go and sponsor one as well. And what the success was, it was going to walk around the shopping centre in London. And then it was also going to walk around the other screens around the country in the UK. And then it became so popular, it started to go to Times Square, to Australia. So these elephants walked around all of the digital screens around the world, bringing their message, but also you then got a little update to say your elephant is now in New York, for instance. So it's a really useful, interesting mix of technology, and also just making the world a bigger place. Just because these elephants are walking around with your name on them, you're now interested in that story. This again is from Zagreb and is about making sure that you hit the right audience. So obviously if you can be very relevant to your audience, that's the best kind of ad. Now, if you're pedigree and you're trying to actually talk about dog food or any product, quite frankly, that you need a dog owner to listen to, then the best way to find out if they're a dog owner is to detect the dog. So they had an algorithm that was actually trained on detecting dogs. Not only dogs, it could tell you whether it was a small dog, a large dog, a medium dog, and therefore give you relevant advice or relevant products that might help you out as well. So as you can see, it's detecting dogs, multiple dogs, small dogs, large dogs. So really interesting how you can then train, say, cameras to do something very subtle. You know, obviously there's no sort of there's no data privacy issues going on here, but brilliantly targeted adverts to the owners of people who have dogs, which is very good. Now this one is all about location relevance, about not only just where it is, but actually it's the size of the billboard, the physical billboard. Now this is often forgotten in outdoor advertising, is where is the billboard and how does it sit within the environment and how can we use that? Because people are experiencing them as they're walking around. Now this advert here was about releasing captive orcas. Now it turns out that the billboard size is the same size as a legal minimum for a tank for one of these whales in captivity. Now, as you can see, these billboards aren't big. I mean, they are big, but they're not big if you're a whale. So it just is really, it's almost embarrassing to see how small these tanks are. So what you did here is you saw one of these things. It said, if you'd like to release a whale and donate to the charity, then please use your phone, send us a text. And then what happened is it said, thank you. It recognized that your text happened and the whale would swim out of the advert saying thank you. And then for the rest of the day, you would see whales swimming through the other ads in the area, nice and free, basically. So you actually activated the whale to move out, as you're seeing just there. So really interesting about using the actual physical size and the location of the screen as part of your campaign as well. And speaking of which, this is all the rage right now, and quite rightly so. This is Anamorphic 3D. So this is actually, this is basically giant cat. That's how this translates. Now you have seen quite a lot of these, I expect, but this is a really good example. Only works from exactly this angle, but as you can see, it looks amazing. People will then take notice of it, take videos of it and share it on their phone. That's the ultimate that you're really after. Yes, they can walk past it, but if they're then taking photos or videos and sharing it, you have won the game at that point. So Anamorphic 3Ds, they're pretty much, you can do this on any screen. It doesn't have to be a corner screen. You can do these on flat screens as well. So if you're interested in how to capture attention right now, then Anamorphic 3D screens are where it's at. There you go. So hopefully that was useful. Hopefully that's inspired you about digital out of home. But now I'm going to move into the final part, which is, let's just talk about the future. This is, let's say, out of home leaning innovation that you should probably know about as well. So first of all, before we do that, I'm just going to talk about what is a trend. Now, at the moment, we're in a lot of hype about generative AI, and this is the Gardner hype cycle. It is just useful to explain, just so you understand that not everything you're hearing about will really end up being something we need to worry about. So if anything happens, there's some technology, an innovation happens, an invention. So it happens, nobody knows about it, and then all of a sudden you hear some hype. So people start to report it. People like me will tell you about it maybe. You'll hear it on YouTube or you'll hear it on the news. Great. That's where we are really at the top of hype. And then you realize it doesn't quite do what you thought it could do, and you go into the trough of disillusionment. And then eventually you go to the slope of enlightenment when you realize what it can do. And then eventually it goes to the plateau of productivity when it actually becomes useful and almost industrial at that point. So just to let you know, there's some things in here, generative AI, that are really stopping everything else moving. Everybody's talking about generative AI right now. NFTs, Bitcoin, blockchain, all used to be on this curve and has now gone to the other side. So just be aware that this bit is suspiciously empty right now of actual practical things that are working. We're hearing a lot of hype, a lot of videos on LinkedIn probably, but not a huge amount of actual practical stuff comes out right now. So just be aware of that when you hear about trends. So let's talk about a couple of examples of what you should be interested in now. First of all, generative AI is now here in some products. So this is Adobe's Firefly. It's essentially helping you do creativity using generative AI. So you can upload your things, you can ask it using text to do things for you, and you can just use editing using sliders using AI. So if you have the wrong face, your expression is wrong, you can change it. If you want to generate something completely, it will do that for you. So that is available. And if you're not taking advantage of this, then you can be sure your competitors are. fake digital out of home, or faux, or do, or whatever we want to call it. So these are ads that aren't actually real, but people think they are because they are so nearly real, and people are getting confused with augmented reality and virtual reality and all those sorts of things. So the advert on the left-hand side from Maybelline is not real. This did not exist. The one in the middle clearly is not real as well. And a giant Barbie in the Burj Khalifa in Dubai did not exist as well. But these get tens of millions of views on TikTok, on Instagram. So you do have to sort of think, okay, how do we extend our advertising campaign? Let's have the real adverts, but how do we extend it with potentially some fake or some false advertising as well, or virtual advertising as some people call it. So VOO is virtual out of home. So just bear in those, just keep an eye out for those as well. Data is something that we're seeing less and less access to. So third-party data, i.e. the stuff you would get from Google, your advertisers through cookies or whatever, that is disappearing through GDPR and all the good reasons. However, you then need to concentrate on two things. One is your first-party data. If you can have your own relationship with your audience, what data can you get from them, and what is the right data that you should be allowed to get from them without being weird or creepy. And if you can't even get that, then there are some really interesting novel data sets you're probably not even looking at. And these are just off of center data sets that nobody's really using. So for instance, if you are a gin drinker, you are more likely to impulse purchase on online, Amazon for instance. The things that you will probably buy when you are drunk, slightly drunk on gin, are clothes, movies and games. So for any of your clients or you are working in the movies, clothes or games industry, then you might want to think, how can you advertise to people in the evening, and how can you find out if they're gin drinkers? And likewise, obviously I'm not really saying this is a valid route for all of your media planning, but this was a really interesting plot from the Pornhub data. When they had an outage, their servers went out, and what they noticed were there was a spike in searches for Fortnite. So you can see the relationship. When Pornhub goes out, Fortnite goes up. So you might infer there's a relationship between those two audiences. So therefore, what do you do with that data, and how do you use that to target your media? I'm not saying how you do it, I'm just saying very interesting novel data sets if you look. QR codes are always going to be a thing. These have been around for 20 years or so. I've always been a big fan, and I'm glad they're actually starting to become really useful and encouraged. So as you can see, there is a 1,500 drone QR code. This was in China. This is also happened in Cannes this year. And as you can see, Rick Astley in the top corner, every single frame of that QR code is a readable, scannable QR code. And in the bottom right corner, you can see a AI generated image. So it looks like a market stall, but it actually scans as a QR code. So quite soon we might be seeing static adverts in billboards that are actually scannable, but also look like the product they are actually advertising. If we go a little bit further ahead into the future, synthetic data is a big thing. So how do you model your campaign if you don't necessarily have all the data to model it on? So this is an interesting example of a 3D virtual world, the Omniverse, as NVIDIA called it. So this models driving cars, and therefore you can then simulate fog, you can simulate trees, you can simulate rain, you can simulate heavy traffic, you can do whatever you want to do. It's good enough footage to actually train cameras into how should the car react in these situations. So this doesn't have to work with 3D and visual, it could just be synthetic data of your product. What happens with your product when it is raining? What happens if a competitor does something? You can model that data synthetically to such an extent that you can actually use it for actual modeling of your products going forwards. This advert is completely generated by AI. So you would start with something like ChatGPT, you would then go to Midjourney to generate the images, you would then go to something like Runway ML Gen 2 to generate the video, and then you would go and generate the audio as well, any way you want really, to be fair. So obviously it's not doing hands, it can't do mouths particularly well right now, but this is increasing at such a pace that I would give it maybe a month and it will get all of this sorted. So just be aware that you might be able to deliver real-time adverts to your audiences, basically just through generating it on the fly, basically. Hacking. Let's talk about hacking. So you need to be a little bit careful these days about how hacking has become accessible to everybody. Now, I actually have one here. This is called the Flipper Zero. This is 170 euros or something like that. It's hard to get hold of now because it's sold out because it's so popular, and that's the point. This will allow you to mess around with infrared, Wi-Fi. It will allow you to flip the charge port up on a Tesla, all those sorts of things. But it will also allow, it's basically trying to be a penetration testing device, a pen testing device for hackers, just to check things out. But you can buy this on the internet, you can download some software into it, and you can do all sorts of nonsense. If you're in America, you can make traffic lights change colors. If you want to make garage doors go up and down, you can do that as well. So the point of this is just to make sure that if you're in the hardware or the software game, just make sure that you're super secure. Even your gate data to let you get in and out of your building, you can actually use one of these to simulate your gate card. So just be aware and maybe just take another cycle around your security. Remixing adverts on the fly. So this is a part of Google's Performance Max platform. So when you talk about dynamic advertising or generative advertising or programmatic advertising, this is taking it to the next step. Programmatic, generally you have the ads that you need and you release them to whoever might be watching them at the time for the best audience. Whereas this actually says you don't even need that advert in the first place. Whatever you don't have, it can help you make it up. If you want a picture of a cat, great, you got a picture of a cat. If you would like a voiceover for it, great, it will do that as well. If you need translations of that, it will do that. If you need a tree in the background of your product, it will put a tree in the background of your product, all to make sure it is relevant to the end user. So something like that using generative AI and voices, which are very realistic these days, are coming to platforms like the Performance Max platform now. And if we look just slightly further into the future, or quite far into the future, these are all kind of available now, but not really used. So this actually came and went. This was Rift AR, and it was when things like NFTs were really big last year. This was showing you an alternate reality where if you're wearing some sort of pass-through augmented reality glasses that can see the world and can augment into it, you can load your NFTs into the physical space and you can essentially attach them like graffiti or billboards, should we say, to the real world. And if you then subscribe to somebody's point of view and you would like to see what your favorite influencer sees when they're going down the road, then you can see what they see as well. And vice versa, you can become a visual influencer at that point. So in the future, we probably, will be advertising like this as well. How do you get the cut through? Well, you have those spaces that you can't project on. Those are called billboards. This is what BMW came up with CES. This is a color changing car, but it uses the same technology as the Kindle, so EInk. So once you remove the electricity from it, it stays that color. I think it has 32 colors. So if you want a yellow car, you can have a yellow car. If you are probably a criminal, you can change the color. If they're looking for a black car, you can change it to a blue car. That's absolutely fine. But imagine this in the future when you can run adverts on this. You park it in the car park, use the cameras probably around your car to see if anybody's actually looking at the adverts, and then maybe you get paid for those as well. So people might become personal advertising, but even so, we're seeing screens integrated into dresses, into clothing, into shoes, into cars, into all sorts of things. Power is going to be a big thing in the future as well, and especially efficiencies, especially when we're seeing power cuts in America, that sort of thing. And if you're not critical infrastructure, then you have your power removed. Now, if you are in advertising, you probably don't want that to happen. So if you can generate your own electricity, that's good. And we're seeing these really novel things. Yes, we're seeing solar. Yes, we're seeing wind. But this uses a flappy little thing. And as it flaps, each time it flaps, it generates just a few milliwatts. But it also has a solar panel on that little flag as well. So even if it's sunny or windy, it will generate electricity locally to the billboard. If these are all on the back and there are no moving parts, it literally just bends. So the more novel way you can generate your own electricity, the better in the future, and people are showing the way. And finally, we have this one, and this is real for now, so that you can do this right now. This is taking images straight from somebody's brain and visualizing them. So if you apply this to advertising, if you want to know, did somebody actually take in your advert? Did they see your billboard? Well, you put them in an MRI scanner or fMRI scanner, you scan their brains, and you can actually regenerate the images directly from their brain. Now, the way this works is you put somebody in a scanner, you show them lots of images, and you record against every image the brain activity that they showed. And you do that with multiple people. You can then average out all the activity. If you show somebody an apple, their brain activity, broadly speaking, looks like this. So if you put all that to one side and then put somebody else in a scanner and ask them to imagine an apple, you'll see the same brain activity. And then the computer can say, I've seen that before with an apple. It's probably like this. So that's what's going on here. you show somebody in an aeroplane, and everything else to the right hand side of that was generated by pulling the data out of somebody's brain. So now the images, and by the way, your dreams can be replicated onto film. So where are we going with that? I'll leave your imagination to make that one up. And we are at the end. Hopefully that was useful, possibly a little bit over time, but hey, you're sitting down. Hopefully this was fun. I do these kind of reports every week. If you're interested in that, there's a QR code on the left-hand side, you know, like, subscribe, send a comment, etc. Every Monday morning, 9 o'clock, or every 8 o'clock in Croatia. However, I must also say that Goto Digital, if you do want to have a chat with them and forward your conversations about being innovative in digital out of home, or even just effective in out of home, then they are probably the best person I could recommend in probably Europe, to be honest. But if you're in Croatia, definitely scan that QR code and go and have a chat. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully it was interesting. Yeah, I'll see you over on YouTube watching my thing every Monday morning. But other than that, have a good day.